Imagine finding three stocks yielding close to 7%, sometimes higher, while the S&P 500 sits near all-time highs, and everyone else is chasing the same 10 megacap names. Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, it's not some hidden trick, and it's definitely not something only hedge funds get access to. In fact, the reason these three keep showing up on my radar is almost embarrassingly simple. Nobody's looking at them. But here's the thing. You'll want to stick around for all three, because the third one is the one that got the most pushback last time I covered it. And today, I'm going to actually answer the hard question people asked, instead of glossing over it. Let's address the real problem first. The market's up double digits this year, and when that happens, most investors assume there's nothing left on sale. That's just not true. It's true for the obvious names. It's not true everywhere. Here's the catch. The stocks that get ignored in a rally aren't ignored because they're bad. They're ignored because they don't fit neatly into a headline. No analyst wants to write boring company, steady cash flow, high yield, when they could write about the next AI trade. That gap between attention and actual quality is exactly where opportunity lives. And that's exactly where these three stocks sit right now. Stock 1, Hercules Capital. Let's start with Hercules Capital, ticker HTGC, down roughly 9 to 11% over the past year. And before you write that off as just a bad stock, understand what you're actually looking at. This is a business development company, a BDC, and the entire BDC sector has been beaten up. Some BDC-focused ETFs down well into the double digits over the same stretch. So the first question isn't, why is HTGC down? It's, is the whole sector down, or is this one broken? Here's the scary part. If you just glance at the yield on most financial sites, you'll see something north of 11%. That number is misleading. BDCs like this one pay a base dividend plus special dividends when they have excess income to distribute. The special piece isn't guaranteed. Strip it out, and the real sustainable yield is closer to 9.5%. That's still excellent. It's just not the number the headline shows you. And that difference matters if you're building an income plan around it. So why is the sector down at all? Two reasons. First, the market priced in rate cuts that never really materialized, and that actually matters here because BDCs mostly hold floating rate loans. Higher rates mean more interest income, not less. Second, a chunk of BDC loan books, including Hercules, sit in software and tech lending, and the market's nervous that AI disruption puts some of those borrowers at risk. But here's what the headline doesn't tell you. Look at credit quality instead of headlines. A tiny fraction of Hercules' loan book, under 0.5%, is non-performing. That's an exceptionally clean book for this asset class. Net investment income has comfortably covered the regular dividend in recent quarters. When you put a clean balance sheet next to a beaten-down valuation multiple, that's usually the setup value investors are looking for, not a warning sign. And here's the part most people skip entirely. Not all BDCs are built the same, and lumping them together is exactly how you miss opportunities like this one. A BDC with a sloppy loan book trading at a discount is a value trap. A BDC with a clean loan book trading at a discount because the whole sector got dragged down together is just mispriced. That distinction is the entire game with this asset class, and it's why blanket statements like, "I stay away from BDCs" can cut both ways. Sometimes that caution protects you, and sometimes it means walking past the exact setup you were looking for. The only way to tell the difference is to actually open the loan book, which is exactly what most people never bother doing. Stock 2, AT&T. Now let's talk about AT&T because a few years ago, this was everyone's safe dividend stock, right up until they cut the dividend nearly in half. If you got burned on that, I understand the hesitation, but here's why it might actually be a different story now. The cut was the medicine, not the disease. Before the cut, AT&T was paying out close to 80% of free cash flow as dividends while carrying a massive debt load, over $120 billion in net debt. That's not sustainable long term, and the market punished them for it. After the cut, the payout ratio dropped to around 40%. That's a completely different risk profile. Management has publicly targeted paying down debt toward a healthier leverage ratio, and a lower payout ratio gives them the room to actually do it. Here's the honest pushback, though. Because last time this channel covered AT&T, comments correctly pointed out that debt and credit risk are real concerns. And there's another one worth naming directly: pricing. AT&T has been raising prices on fiber and wireless plans, and price increases always risk pushing some customers to competitors. That's a legitimate churn risk, and it's worth watching subscriber trends each quarter, not just the yield. But look at what the market's actually pricing in. Run a straight dividend discount model with zero future dividend growth, and the stock is worth roughly $13. At today's price, the market is pricing in meaningful dividend growth over time, and analysts are currently projecting high single-digit earnings growth over the next few years, which would support exactly that. Bump the assumed growth rate up even modestly, and the model lands close to where the stock actually trades today. That's the market quietly betting on execution, not hoping for a miracle. If AT&T hits its deleveraging targets and grows earnings anywhere close to what's projected, the current yield becomes the starting point, not the whole story. Compare that to the version of this company a few years ago, the one still paying out 80% of free cash flow while debt kept climbing. That version of AT&T was walking toward another cut. This version is walking away from one. That's not a subtle difference. It's the entire thesis. Stock 3, VICI Properties. And now, the one I know a lot of you have opinions about. VICI Properties, down close to 19% over the past year, in the middle of a stretch where most REITs have actually done well, currently yielding somewhere around 6.5% to 7%, trading at its cheapest valuation multiple in 5 years. Here's the real bear case, laid out honestly. VICI's top 2 tenants are in the process of going private. That matters enormously because right now those tenants file public financials, which means investors can actually verify their ability to cover rent. Once they go private, that visibility disappears. You lose the ability to check the health of the companies your landlord depends on. That's the actual risk. Not Vegas traffic dips a little, but we can no longer see if our tenant is in trouble until it's already a problem. And to the people who asked what happens if a tenant can't pay, that's the real downside scenario. It's not that VICI needs visitor growth every year. It's that if a major tenant runs into financial trouble and that trouble is now hidden from public view, VICI could get blindsided the way a lot of retail investors got blindsided by past retail REIT tenant bankruptcies. That's a real structural concentration risk, and anyone telling you otherwise isn't giving you the full picture. Now, here's the other side. Visitor volume to Las Vegas has actually stabilized and shown positive year-over-year growth in several categories this year, which undercuts the Vegas is dying narrative specifically. But that's a separate question from tenant transparency, and I want to be clear those are 2 different risks, not one. On the numbers side, adjusted funds from operations per share is still growing. The payout ratio sits at a healthy mid-70s%, and even a conservative growth assumption puts fair value meaningfully above today's price. So the valuation case is real. The tenant concentration risk is also real. Both things are true at once, and you should size your position accordingly rather than pretending the risk doesn't exist. A few of you also brought up longer-term structural questions, like water availability in the desert Southwest affecting Vegas long-term. That's a real multi-decade planning issue for the region generally, but it's not something that shows up in a REIT's cash flow over any time frame that matters for an investment decision today. It's the kind of risk worth being aware of, not the kind worth pricing into a valuation model right now. The tenant transparency issue is different. That one's already in motion, and it's the one that actually deserves your attention this year, not 5 years from now. What this actually means for your portfolio. So here's where this leaves us. 3 stocks, 3 different risk profiles, all trading at a discount to what the underlying business is actually worth. Hercules gives you the highest current yield with sector-wide credit risk. AT&T gives you a rebuilding balance sheet with competitive pricing risk. VICI gives you real estate cash flow with a genuine tenant transparency problem. Here's the tough truth nobody likes hearing. High yield always comes with a why. Your job isn't to find a stock with no risk. That stock doesn't exist. Your job is to understand exactly what risk you're being paid to take and decide if you're comfortable holding it through the next headline that scares everyone else out. If you're going to act on any of this, don't go all in on one name because the yield looks the biggest. Size each position based on how much of that specific risk you can stomach: sector risk, credit risk, tenant risk. Check the dividend coverage ratio every quarter, not just the yield. And if a stock's yield jumps suddenly without a price move, that's usually a red flag, not a gift. When the next rate scare or Vegas headline hits and one of these drops 10% in a week, don't panic and don't sell on the headline. Go back to the coverage ratio and the balance sheet. If those haven't changed, the sell-off is usually the opportunity, not the exit sign. And if you want to learn more on retiring, make sure to watch this video as well.